r/AskReddit. People who know a compulsive liar. What ridiculous. Obviously fake. Story have they told you? I knew a guy who, among hundreds of other increasingly absurd lies, told me that he had sex for 24 hours straight. While working as a roofer, in 200° Fahrenheit heat no less, once fell through the roof and landed on a girl's bed next to her. Took a hit so big that it came out of the toilet and he couldn't flush it, so his German grandmother had to come into the room and cut it with scissors, shouting "Hit devil! Hit devil!" in German. Had sex with a girl on the dancer floor of a club. Snorting cocaine out of her ass. Abruptly ended a camping trip weekend with friends because he had to get to a fake doctor's appointment. Told us he couldn't feel pain on this same camping trip and picked up a rock that popped out of the campfiring. He held it for a second. Turns out he could feel pain. She's stuful. She's stuful. Don't say it a third time, or he will appear. I grew up in a pub, and we had a lot of regulars. One guy in particular was consistently lying to the point I assumed he was just 70 odd, and trying to wind people up. Eventually it became clear he was just an almost pathological liar. People would tell stories about how even as a child he would claim to have a diesel-powered train set at home when shown someone's electronic one. The best lie he told me was the time he came into the pub after leaving a tab unpaid for a month or two, saying he was going to pay it off at the weekend because he was about to come into some money. He'd just been digging in his garden and he found a small trove of old coins. He knew they were valuable by the dates on them and sent them to the British Museum for valuation. He said the finder's fee on the oldest one alone could cover the debt 1,000 times over. The oldest coin he found apparently had 150 BC written on it. I ain't gonna lie, it took me far too long to realize why 150 BC would not be written on a coin. Similar to why you'll never see a medal say World War I. Friend at school told everyone that he was in a band and they'd recorded a song and asked if we wanted to hear it. He had the lyrics handwritten on a piece of paper and the recording, which him and his band, that we had somehow never heard about before, had apparently done at a big expensive studio in London, on his MP3 player. He hands me an earphone and tells me to let him know what I think of it. And to be honest, and play She Ducking Hates Me by Puddle of Mud. Yeah, a girl in my high school used to tell everyone that Tom DeLonge was her cousin and that sometimes she would cover for him if he didn't want to play a show. On Monday mornings she would be like, "Oh god, I'm so tired. I had to play a show with Blink in Berlin last night and I just got back a few hours ago." Edit 5 hours later, I just realized how disappointing it would be if you shelled out to go to a Blink 182 gig back in the day and instead of Tom DeLonge you have an overweight, spot-ridden teenage girl from Scotland fronting the show. And no, we never called her out on any of the rubbish she used to chat. Did anyone ever pull up their tour schedule to prove she was lying? Like, oh, they were playing in Berlin. You say, well that's odd, because their website says they were in Omaha. That he and his friend have a YouTube channel with 100k subscribers. But he forgot the name, since he only does the recording and editing. His friend supposedly uploads the videos. Oh. And he forgot his friend's last name, but his first name is definitely John. Edit, have not has. Turns out he's the real brains behind JonTron. He's the ducking bird. One guy tried to convince me once that he had a full-blown UGR playing arena with the hologram projections and everything. Was he called Cito? Not sure about his first name. Most people referred to him by his last name. In university there was a guy who told all sort of outrageous stories about all the chicks he banged at the bar. All the girls he would take home. He was a decent guy outside it. But his stories didn't actually make him sound good in any way. It was just weird he did it. But it went from just took home this awesome blonde, to met this model, and took her home, to took home 2 cheerleaders, yeah man. 3-way. To man. I stepped it up. 3 chicks at the same time. But then, he told us, you know Jane, not her name, but a girl in one of our labs who we all knew, and was very nerdy hot? Yes. Well, she was at the pool hall last night, and she saw me, and came over, and wanted to have a game. She was pretty runk, and we got flirting, and she actually bet me on a game. If I won she'd. Anyways, the thing is, I can't even remember how it went sadly. But it was my duck-eyeing story. It had happened to me the weekend before. And somehow it basically ended up with me striking out. That's the kinda guy I am. I talk about this for years. But it was also a funny story. So I tell my buddies cause I finally have something worth sharing. And here is this asshole telling the story back to me. And exactly the same. Even with the way he struck out. Thankfully our other friend called him out on it. That was Bill Bapapa story, man. Are you even trying anymore with the hit you make up? Guy was mortified. And it somehow went all the way to him crying cause he was a virgin. What an idiot. Bill. WTF. I'm due this story last week. Hit. Honest mistake, I swear. I honestly thought I'd never come across you again after you told me. He created SpongeBob. Despite it being 3 years older than him. Yeah. That kid was really something. He probably wanked and cleaned himself with a sponge, and then when the mold took over he called it SpongeBob. Dude, what? Greg. Greg was a compulsive liar. The likes of which have never been witnessed before on this planet. Greg's real name is George. We call him Greg because he's so stupid. He'd likely misspell his own name, thus Greg was born. Greg had many a fable that he tried to convince us were true. Some of his more popular ones. He'd lost his virginity when he was 13 in France. His dad was a notorious biker gangster. He was wanted by local drug dealers for beating someone up. He's had to beat someone with a bat for giving his sister hit. I could go on with the list. But there was one time that sticks with us the most. It was Greg's 16th birthday. And we were all around his house having a few beers and whatnot. As the evening went on, Greg's cousin wanted to go home. She lived 5 minutes walk away, so he and another friend walked her home. On the journey to her house, they pass a local bar where there's usually fights and whatnot, and it was getting heated out the front. Greg, being the superhero that he is, decided to intervene and stop these Goliaths trying to kill one another. When he got home, he recited a story with pure passion. I ran in there, told them to calm down, and this one geezer was having none of it, and swung at me. So I ducked and hit him in the stomach and he dropped. And I booted another guy in the chest and headbutted him. Then he tried to get up. So I got him in a chokehold and choked him the duck out. Whilst telling this story and demonstrating the different hits he dealt out, my friend who was with them was waiting patiently behind him to finish his story. Once Greg was finished with his little recap of events, my friend loud and clearly stated no. Greg walked up. Someone swung at him, missed. Greg fell over anyway. So we walked back. Even Greg's mom was shocked at his level of commitment to his own lies. To be fair, France is the perfect place to lose your virginity younger. We have X when we are 6 or 7 here. That might be because I'm the president of the Ninja Mafia though. The position comes with benefits. Also, did I tell you about the time I killed 2 tigers with my bare hands? Bare hands? You mean you use 2 hands? Pussy. I did it with one hand tied behind my back. Hit by a bus 5 times and was born in Australia but never travelled in his life. We are in England. Maybe that last bus hit him so hard he flew halfway across the planet. So how'd you get to England? I took the bus. Not told directly to me, but to other people. That she has leukemia. Therefore she's not able to get pregnant. Then accusing someone of getting her pregnant. Saying that her brother died. Then posting a picture with him the next day. She was probably the worst compulsive liar I've ever met. I mean, if you're going to lie, at least make your stories consistent. Yeah, this is a strange part about lying to me. I get the basic concept, but if you're going to do it, at least make sure your stories are not going to come out as false without anyone even needing to do any research. The one about the dead brother is just comically dumb, even though I do believe it. I've heard similarly stupid lies. Update: something I learned from all responses to my post here is that mental illness is more than just an amplification of feelings. That is, everybody feels sad some days, but depressed people are sadder, but indeed that this is a dramatic misfiring in the brain that really has no origin in reason. I don't even know if a compulsive liar is necessarily trying to keep a web of lies straight. I think some of them are just default liars. It's literally a compulsion. to say something that isn't true, as opposed to trying to scam someone. Her house was for sale on eBay. An exchange student in her house was her estranged brother. Then he was her boyfriend and we'd all misheard that he was her brother. She was half Dutch, a quarter African and a quarter Spanish. She looked like the lead singer of Erasmus, except with very thin brown hair instead of black. A friend of mine told her household bleach was the same as hairdresser's bleach. She dyed a patch of her hair and it fell out, so she wore a headscarf and said she had cancer. She qualified for Junior Spanish Eurovision. When asked why she wasn't in another photo she took, stole from internet, we were told everyone was too busy rehearsing to photograph her. Her dad owned an airline. She's a Spanish princess. Or maybe she was an African princess. Maybe both. She spoke Dutch, Spanish and English fluently, was regularly caught out by native speakers. Still continued claiming it was true. It's a different dialect. etc. She got the highest possible marks in our final exams. Got a scholarship for one of the most prestigious colleges in our country. But was putting it off for a year to focus on singing. She was still knocking around the town 3 years later. She knew loads of celebrities and the badly photoshopped pictures of her with them were proof. She added random symbols to her name to make it look more Dutch, for instance. She added an E and a German O into her surname, yet still pronounced it as it was prior to the symbol addition. Due to her African heritage, she thought the black girls in our school would be cool with her calling them the N-word. One punched her in the face and broke her contact lens in her eye. Cool. Cool. Except she kept switching which eye was closed when she didn't think anyone was looking. Oh. She was a rapper and showed me and a mate one of her raps. It was that I wear khaki pants. My middle name's Lance. My grandma's from France rap from Scary Movie 3. She was the most ridiculous person ever. But the lies were hilarious. Obligatory edit. Various people in our school knew her family, as did a few teachers. No. She was not really African/Spanish/Dutch. Well, possibly Dutch somewhere way back the family line. But to be that kinda mix, her mother would have to have been half Spanish, half African, which she was not. She dropped the African/Spanish thing about 2 years into our time in school and became just half Dutch instead. eBay does have a property section. Her house wasn't really for sale. Never heard another word about it. Please don't dye your hair with household bleach. Second reference to the Erasmus in one thread. Why the sudden popularity? I must say I feel bad for getting this username without even realizing it was a band beforehand. Womp womp. Not me, but a professor. My professor taught screenwriting, woot woot, film school, and one day he decided to go out and find the next Hollywood blockbuster, or whatever. Eventually, he was contacted by a neighboring college about this woman on their swim team that had an amazing story. He goes to check it out. There, he meets a woman balding from chemotherapy. I think in her 40s. He never told us her age. But based on her life story, she had to be on the older side. When my professor asked her about her life she opened up to him. She was ex-Navy and was honorably discharged due to a mission gone wrong. Basically, her and the other soldiers were disarming bombs of some type. Can't remember if they were landmines or the ones that float around in the sea. Many of her friends and teammates died, including the one dude having an affair with her. She claimed the US government would never let the story leak. Afterwards, my professor and this woman continued talking about her life. She had a journal in which she recorded everything that happened. He would sometimes take her to the hospital so that she could encourage other cancer patients to stay strong during their ordeal, and also for chemo treatments. Things became weird when my professor couldn't find anyone to back her story up. Everyone who'd know about the botched mission was dead, and her friends would mysteriously cancel meetings at the last minute. My professor didn't want to doubt the story of a brave soldier recovering from cancer, but it was just too weird. So, he called the high school she told him she attended to check out her story. There was no record of her attendance at the high school. Of course. My professor confronted her about it. She immediately turned tail and ran. Months later, he saw her picture on the cover of a sports magazine. She was a blind scare now. Turns out, that woman didn't even have cancer. She spent hours at the hospital to keep up the act and even gave talks to real cancer patients about hope. TLDR, woman lies about being a soldier and having cancer to an alarming extent. There's proof that she has done this several times. Edit, sailor not soldier. Thanks for the correction. Knowledgeable Redditors. I'm always alarmed at cancer fakers. But somehow I'm more alarmed that you referred to someone in their 40s as on the older side. I suddenly feel old for being in my 40s. I said on the older side because she was on a college swim team and I thought people would assume that she was younger than 30. I didn't mean to say that people in their 40s are old. Sorry. He told me he was the head of the Yakuza clan and they want him to go back to Cali to run it. He also told me he was raised by Buddhist monks and his mom's a terrible person who hates him. He's Cambodian. He has the patience of a 6-year-old. And his mom used to give him a couple hundred every month when he roomed with one of my best friends. He honestly thinks we believe him. I once knew a warehouse worker who claimed that he used to be Japan's premier heart surgeon. He claimed that one day a Yakuza boss needed a heart transplant. But during the operation, the Yakuza boss died. The Yakuza was very mad. So he smuggled himself in a fishing boat to America. He said he'd actually killed the Yakuza boss on purpose, and it was his biggest secret. But he liked to tell everyone that would listen. In Japan, heart surgeon. Number 1. Ducking, like and subscribe.